Glass Road in Lisbon causing queues. In West Yorkshire, the A61 is partly blocked by an accident on Barnes Road at Woolwich, with queues each way towards there. On the M6 in Greater Manchester, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound after an accident between junctions 26 and 25 after the M58, with queues from junction 27. Standish in Conway on the A55, the inside lanes closed westbound after an accident between junctions 22 and 21 towards Colwyn Bay, causing queues. In Gwynedd, the A487 is closed in both directions southwest of Bangor between the Evelyn Heady roundabout and the A55 at Park Menai, causing queues. In Surrey, the A25 is closed each way along Bletchingley Road in Nutfield after an accident causing queues. And in Devon, the A38 is partly blocked westbound by a breakdown at Ivy Bridge, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, it's Thursday the 30th of July, January. Yes. Live across the UK, this is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, tragedy in the sky. Just miles away from the White House, an American Airlines flight has collided mid-air into a helicopter, just seconds from landing. 67 people were on board. A major rescue operation is now underway.
Active operation that's going to last many hours as we continue to work through recovery efforts and rescue operations.
Hope is fading because of the challenging conditions and freezing cold are disrupting rescuers as families share their devastation and their hope.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
Awful questions are now turning to how this could have happened as the CEO of American Airlines has spoken out about the tragedy.
This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones.
Also coming up, a GB News exclusive as our very own Mark White joins an immigration raid to find out how many illegal migrants are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Ah, OK. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, OK? So at the moment, OK, under arrest.
And shoplifting, crime on the rise. A surge in shoplifting being reported, 2,000 incidents a day. Can you believe it? Businesses are crying out for help, but what do we do? The sun, of course, will be rising in Washington, D.C. We'll bring you the images as we see them of what is happening there. As we say, it's still officially a rescue operation, but looking more bleak by the moment.
And it was a military helicopter, believe it or not, on a training flight that was in collision with the American Airlines plane.
Had it only just been a few more metres towards the coast as opposed to over the water to the banking, then it could have been...
The plane was just seconds away from landing. Tragic, but we will bring all the latest on that.
That's right. gbnews.com/you're safe for your contributions this morning. First, though, Aaron Armstrong with the latest news.
Very good morning to you. Our top story, as you've just been hearing, a search and rescue operation is underway in Washington, D.C. after a passenger plane crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter. Now, these are the latest live shots from the US Capitol. More than 300 emergency responders are searching for survivors. 64 people, including crew, were on the American Airlines flight. 3 soldiers were on board the Black Hawk helicopter, and at least 19 bodies have already been recovered. We can show you some footage of the plane coming into land at Reagan Washington National Airport seconds before the collision. The helicopter was on a training flight when the crash happened just before 9 p.m. local time. It is the first major US commercial air crash since 2009. 3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai nationals held in Gaza are expected to be released by Hamas this morning. The 20-year-old Agam Berger, a female soldier, has already been handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas in what appears to be another carefully choreographed scene. The 20-year-old was released in Jabalia, that's in northern Gaza, a little earlier. She was then transferred to the Israeli military and to the border. Well, 2 civilians, 29-year-old Arbel Yehud and an 80-year-old man, Gadi Moses, are also due to be released after more than 15 months in captivity. In exchange for the hostages, 110 Palestinians will be freed later from Israeli jails. They'll be released near Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. Now to some other news. Water bills set to rise in England and Wales by an average of £123 per household from April. It means a typical bill will rise by about 26%, so from £480 per year to around £603. Now, the industry body, Water UK, says the extra money will fund infrastructure projects and will provide help for struggling customers. But consumer groups are warning the rise means more households will fall into debt. The increase surpasses Ofwat's recent 5-year price limits due to inflation. Increasing numbers of people from the EU are abusing the common travel arrangement with Ireland to enter the UK to work illegally. GB News can exclusively reveal many Romanians and Bulgarians in particular are avoiding border checks by crossing from the Republic, while others are simply arriving on tourist visas before finding work. GB News was given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams who've increased the number of raids they've carried out by a third since Labour came to power. And Donald Trump says he has signed an executive order to set up a migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The US president sets up to 30,000 migrants who cannot be returned to their home countries will be held at the notorious naval base. He says the centre, which would be separate from its high-security military prison, will house, in his words, the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Guantanamo Bay was set up in 2002 by then-President George W. Bush to hold detainees in the wake of 9/11 and the War on Terror. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'll be back with more in about half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Bevan Andrew with you until midday. The breaking news, of course, that you might be waking up to this morning is that this tragedy in Washington, D.C., a passenger jet with 67 people on board has crashed into the Potomac River, only 2 miles from the White House. This is after colliding with a US Army helicopter.
So far, they've recovered 19 bodies from the wreckage in the river. Coast Guard police divers and ambulance units remain at the scene.
New details are emerging this morning. Of course, the sun will be coming up in Washington, D.C. whilst we are on air. A US figure skating organisation has confirmed that several members of the ice skating community were on board the plane.
As well as a married Russian figure skating champion. Well, let's talk to an airline pilot and author of Confessions of an Airline Pilot, Why Planes Crash.
Terry Tozer. Morning, Terry.
Good morning.
Morning. Why, in your assessment in this situation, might this have happened? We've got a commercial airliner here with civilian passengers on it, and then we've got a military helicopter. Who would have right of way under that situation?
Well, the passenger jet, I suppose you would say, have a right of way, although basically this is not an uncommon situation in the US where they seem to mix traffic that is under the control of the air traffic controller and traffic that is transiting the area visually. So the passenger jet, as far as I understand it, was given clearance to land, and so I doubt whether the crew were taking much notice of anybody who might have been coming at them from the side. It seems that the helicopter crew were given responsibility to separate themselves from other traffic, which, you know, is sometimes a questionable procedure.
How busy is this airport, the Ronald Reagan Airport, Terry?
Very busy, like all US airports at major cities. There is always a kind of a sense of them, you know, getting an awful lot of traffic into a small area. It's always very busy in the US. The air traffic control system has been under a bit of strain. They've been short of controllers. I'm not sure whether that would have had any impact in this case, but the temptation to try and get a lot of traffic through an area is very American, I'm afraid. And you know, I think that that perhaps there will be some questions asked about the general procedure that was involved in this case.
It was 9 p.m. local time in Washington, D.C. Obviously, that city is 5 hours behind where we are now. We'll be watching the sun coming up in the next few hours, Terry. What will be happening there now in terms of a rescue operation?
Well, I'm sure that the very first responders were, well, we know they're on the scene. The National Transportation Safety Board accident investigators would have been called immediately, and I would imagine they're probably already on the scene. What seems at first sight to have been an issue, when we look at the video that you showed earlier on, there are in fact 2 aircraft that are airborne, and I wonder if the helicopter crew were looking at the wrong one.
That's interesting. It's extraordinary to think, Terry, that this happened just 2 miles from the White House, one of the most secure spots in the entire United States.
Well, indeed. I mean, it's, you know, it is perhaps slightly controversial that you've got commercial aircraft so close to all these vital organs of the US state. But, you know, because it's where it is, there is a lot of traffic. A lot of people want to go in and out of that area for the very reason that it is the capital.
We're always shocked when there is a crash like this, Terry, but how frequent are air crashes?
Well, they're not frequent at all. I mean, I always say, I say in my book, basically, that the most dangerous part of my working day was driving to and from the airport.
Right.
As a general rule, it's an extremely safe way to travel. But obviously, when you mix different types of traffic in high-density areas, and particularly at night, where the visual clues to the pilots are definitely different to what they would be in daytime, you do increase the risk level.
Yeah, and of course, the river where the plane crashed is 8 foot deep. I mean, I know we can't project, Terry, but the temperature in the Potomac River will be so low. I mean, I'd have thought hypothermia would strike very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, tragically, I think the chances of any survivors are very, very slim. I mean, both from the point of view of the nature of the accident And as you say, the Potomac River, I mean, we go back to the 1980s. You probably remember seeing those graphic scenes of a Palm Air crash going into the Potomac full of ice floes this time of year. I mean, it's not somewhere you'd want to go swimming at all.
OK, thank you, Terry. Terry Tozer there, author of Confessions of an Airline Pilot. Donald Trump has said in an official statement he had been fully briefed about the situation. He said the airplane was on a perfect and routine line of approach to the airport.
He probably heard it. You think about it, just
if he's
2
there
miles.
In DC, absolutely.
Yeah.
The helicopter was going straight at the aeroplane for an extended period of time, says Donald Trump. It is a clear night. The lights on the plane were blazing. Why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? Why didn't the control tower tell the helicopter what to do instead of asking if they saw the plane? This is a bad situation. It looks like it should have been prevented, he said.
And, of course, the helicopter was on a training flight.
Yeah.
So you don't know if that... Does that imply the pilot was inexperienced?
Well, from that statement from Donald Trump, it certainly looks like he's suggesting that the fault was clearly with the helicopter as opposed to with the airline.
Because the plane was just 400 feet or metres from the ground.
Yeah, really
so close.
Sad, tragic, awful. To be so close, as you say, to the centre of politics within America, but also just the families of all of these people. 19 bodies found so far.
Yeah, and there were 3 soldiers on the helicopter that we're aware of, 60 passengers, at least 60 passengers on the plane, and of course there's the crew. I think Terry's probably right. There's very little hope of for the passengers.
That's right. OK, we will bring you any emerging details of that. Obviously, it is still a developing story. But up next, a shocking surge in shoplifting across the country. 2,000 incidents a day. Retailers are crying out for help. But first, if you want some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of our top European holiday destinations.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures, and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
First, mate, we had lockdowns. Then we had soaring energy costs. Then we had a hike in national insurance for employers. Then we had soaring wage costs. And now the government expects people like you to monitor what people say in boozers. And if you don't, you might get sued. I bet you feel like saying cheers to them, don't you?
Look, it just looks like another war on pubs. You know, remember they tried to stop smoking outside as well. Luckily, they rethought that. But look, we've got everything stacked against us, Martin. And the last thing I need to do is go and get in people's conversations. At the end of the day, a pub is like an extension to your home. You know, it's a public house. Friends go to speak. Friends go to meet, unwind after work. It's none of my business what you're talking about. Any good publican, and myself included, anyone that was rude to anyone or on purpose, they want to offend people or they want to dig people out, antagonise them, of course I'm going to step in and say, behave yourself or you go. But look, how can I be on social media talking about everything, transgender, immigration, and people not be allowed to do that at the bar or do that at the table of a pub? It's ridiculous. And these ministers really do need to sort of look at this legislation and see where it could lead. Because I'm not going to stop anyone speaking in my pub. Again, if they're trying to antagonise people or they're rude or trying to start trouble, they get thrown out the front door, you know, and any publican worth their salt is going to do that as well. But we're not there to police people's conversations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:48. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev on GB News.
Well, I think these figures are really shocking. Retail crime is now at an all-time high, with more than 2,000 theft incidents reported a day, at a cost of, get this, £2.2 billion to retailers. That's not to retailers, that's to us.
Yeah, quite.
Because the costs are passed on to us.
Last year, over 70 incidents alone included use of a weapon. I would have thought it'd be more than that, with double reported from the previous year.
Let's talk to Norman Brennan, former police officer, and he's director of the Law and Order Foundation. Norman, we've all seen it in our local stores now. Most of them have some form of security guard. But what can they do if there's gangs? Because I've seen it myself, gangs going in and just raiding the shelves. And what can one security guard do? It's become a way of life for some people now.
No, I completely understand. Good morning, Andrew and Bev. It's a national epidemic. I've been telling everybody for years about knife crime. Nobody did anything about it. We got an epidemic identically about shoplifting. I live in Twickenham, and there's not a shop that's not affected by shoplifting. A few months ago myself, I was in Waitrose. One of the security guards had been bottled in the face the previous week.
Dear.
The staff knew that I was a police officer or a retired police officer. The same guy came in as we were speaking. I followed him. He went straight to the shoplifting. And as I went to arrest him for the previous ABH the following week, he punched me in the face. I had a black eye for a week. Fortunately, at 65, I can still take someone to the ground. I've nicked 31 people in 9 years. And some of them have been violent. Now, if that's what they do to someone who's a retired police officer, knows how to look after himself, no wonder why the shop staff are concerned. What do we need to do about it was what your question is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we need, Andrew. We need people like ex-military, trained on a residential course by people like me, the police service, and those in conflict resolution, self-defence. And these people will be equipped and licensed to carry quick cuffs. And the police will be told that when they call for you to assist them, you will go every time. And we will have 100%, unless there's exceptional reasons, we will charge each and every single person, and the courts will back us. Now, how often have we heard all those promises, Andrew and Bev, and it never comes true? They tell us all these lovely promises. We had all the riot assaults in place under the Offences Against the Persons Act. So what did the government do? They introduced another worthless and pointless offence of a shop on a retail staff. 50% of retail staff fear being assaulted. 2/3 are stressed. They are concerned about their welfare. There's 3 million people, and if 50% fear being assaulted, what sort of work atmosphere must that be?
Awful. And there's a sense, isn't there, Norman, I think, particularly maybe amongst young people, that, well, the shop can just absorb this cost. You know, it's a big conglomerate, it's a big corporation. They can just absorb it if it's a supermarket. Just a sense of entitlement that people can just go and help themselves to products and there'll be no victim of this crime. But that's simply not the case, is it?
No, you're absolutely right, Bev. It certainly isn't. We often think of shoplifting, or I certainly did, and Andrew's in my time, we're a little bit older than you, that somebody might nick a bar of chocolate. That may not have a knock-on effect, but it did affect, obviously, because something was stolen. Now, some of these gangs, and they go around in gangs, they got a car or van around the corner, and they go in, and recently, I think there were 9 Sainsbury's locals that were hit, I believe, on the same day, in one occasion, £10,000 worth of goods were stolen. Now, if this is what one gang is doing, and it probably was the same gang, because if you've got the actual route of where they were going, this is costing the industry, you say 2.2. I think it is probably nearer 3 billion.
Yeah.
How many offences are not reported? And you're absolutely right. Why is it we keep on having to talk on television and saying how shocked we are on so many crimes, and today it's about shoplifting, yet nothing is ever done, the police don't turn up, and they tell me, Norman, we nick these people, we spend a whole shift doing paperwork. It means a patrol car and 2 officers are off the scene. And just now, when I posted on social media I was coming to discuss this, a sergeant has messaged me and said, Norman, my team has been reduced by 90% over the last 4 years. And all these promises, fellas, about these 13,000 new officers, 3,000 are from existing officers, 5,000 of special constables, which work 4 hours a week for free, and 5,000 are PCSOs. And just to finish off with, guess what the Home Secretary and the government are doing? They're cutting all the police budgets, and most forces are having to reduce, or in Essex case, get rid of every single PCSO. We have a national crisis. Unless we deal with these epidemics like we do with cancer, I'm afraid society will live in fear, as do shop workers.
Yeah, it's desperate, isn't it? Norman, thank you so much. Norman Brennan there, former police officer and director of the Law and Order Foundation.
We're going to return to these live pictures from Washington, D.C. Rescue stories underway after a passenger jet with 67 people on board crashed into the Potomac River only 2 miles from the White House after colliding with a US Army helicopter. It was 9 p.m. local time America last night.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Yeah, 19 bodies so far confirmed to have been retrieved from the water, but we will bring you any more news on this as it emerges. This is Britain's Newsroom. Don't go anywhere.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost. Also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead. Plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland. Could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Antrim, the A501 is partly blocked each way by an accident on Mullaglass Road in Lisbon, causing queues. In County Down, the A51 remains closed along Enderby Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. On the M6 in Greater Manchester, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed southbound after an accident in junctions 26 and 25 after the M58, with queues from junction 27. At Standish, in Conway on the A55, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 22 and 21 towards Colwyn Bay, causing queues. In Gwynedd, the A487 is closed each way southwest of Bangor between the Irvine-Helly roundabout and the A55 at Park Menai, causing queues. In Rutland, the A606 is closed at Langham after an accident. In Surrey, the A25 is closed along Bletchley Road in Nutfield after an accident, and Gatwick Express services remain suspended between Gatwick Airport and Brighton because of a landslip.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 10 a.m. Thursday, the 30th of January, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Tragedy in the sky. Just 2 miles from the White House, an American Airlines flight collides mid-air with a helicopter just seconds from landing. 67 people on board. A major rescue operation is underway.
Active operation that's going to last many hours as we continue to work through recovery efforts and rescue operations.
For finding survivors. The challenging conditions and freezing cold are disrupting rescuers. Families are sharing their devastation, but still some with hope.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
And of course, questions now turn to how this could have happened as the chief executive of American Airlines speaks out on the tragedy.
This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones.
Also this morning, a GB News exclusive. Mark White joins an immigration raid to find out how many migrants are exploiting an EU loophole to enter and work in Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, okay? So at the moment, okay, you're under arrest.
Well, many people are fixated and angered, understandably, by the small boat. But the fact is, the vast majority of those coming here to work illegally arrive by much more mundane means.
Crime on the rise. A surge in shoplifting with 2,000 incidents a day now being reported. Retailers are crying out for help.
And it's been revealed that a basket of healthy food costs more than double that of more unhealthy options. Do you have to be wealthy to eat healthy? We're going to be debating that. And we're going to be bringing you that breaking news from America. We've got travel expert Simon Calder in the studio with us to shed some light on what might have happened there. gbnews.com/your say for your thoughts this morning. First, though, with the news, here's Aaron.
Very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10 here in the GB Newsroom. A search and rescue operation is underway in Washington, D.C. after a passenger plane crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter. Live pictures here from the US Capitol, where more than 300 emergency responders are searching for survivors. 64 people, including crew, were on the American Airlines flight. 3 soldiers on board the Black Hawk helicopter, and so far at least 19 bodies have been recovered. This was the plane coming into land at Reagan Washington National Airport seconds before the collision. The helicopter was on a training flight. It all happened just before 9 p.m. local time. It is the first major US commercial air crash since 2009. And the operation underway, it includes police divers, multiple boats and helicopters, although the windy, dark conditions have been described as extremely tough. Washington's DC's Fire Chief John Donnelly said at a press conference, "We don't know if there are any survivors." Let's hear from the Mayor of Washington now, Muriel Browser, who says their thoughts are with the families of those involved in the crash.
So certainly I speak for the people of Washington, 700,000 of us who are extremely sorry for the families who are experiencing loss tonight. And so we want you to know that we will continue to work with American Airlines to share information as frequently as possible and make sure that we're getting accurate information.
And more breaking news this morning. 3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai nationals held in Gaza are expected to be released by Hamas over the course of the day. The 20-year-old Agam Berger, a female soldier, has already been handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas. This in Jabalia in the north, in what appears to be another carefully choreographed scene. She was released, given to the Red Cross and then transferred to the Israeli military. The IDF say they now have her safe and well. 2 civilians, the 29-year-old Arbel Yehud and the 80-year-old Gadi Moses, are also to be released after more than 15 months in Gaza. Let's bring you some live shots then from Han Yunis in southern Gaza, where the third swap of a fragile ceasefire is now well underway. The Thai hostages haven't been named. Their release, if it happens, would be a unilateral move by Hamas, so therefore not part of the ceasefire deal. 110 Palestinian prisoners are to be freed a little later from Israeli jails in exchange. And these, we can bring you other live pictures from Tel Aviv in Israel, where families of those held captive have been gathering, many of whom have been extremely critical of how the Israeli government, led by Benjamin Netanyahu, have prosecuted the war. Now, increasing numbers of people from the EU are abusing the common travel arrangement with Ireland to enter the UK to work illegally. GB News can exclusively reveal that Romanians and Bulgarians in particular are avoiding border checks by crossing from the Republic, while others are simply arriving on tourist visas before finding work. GB News has been given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams who've increased the number of raids they've carried out by a third since Labour came to power. Much more on this to come from Mark White very shortly. Water bills are set to rise in England and Wales by an average of £123 per household from April. It means a typical bill will rise by 26%, from £480 per year to £603. The industry body, Water UK, says the extra money will help to fund infrastructure projects and will provide for struggling customers. However, consumer groups have warned that the rise will mean more households fall into debt. Retail crime is at an all-time high, with more than 2,000 incidents reported per day. Last year, over 70 incidents alone included the use of a weapon, with double that reported in the previous year. Thefts have reached 20 million incidents, costing retailers some £2.2 billion. And Donald Trump signed an executive order to set up a migrant detention facility at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The US president says up to 30,000 migrants who can't be returned to their home countries, will be held at the notorious naval base. Mr. Trump says the centre, which would be separate from the high-security military prison, will house, in his words, the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Well, Guantanamo Bay was set up back in 2002 by then-President George W. Bush to hold detainees in the wake of 9/11 and the war on terror. You are fully up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with more in just under half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, let's talk to the travel expert Simon Coulter about this breaking news of the tragedy in the United States, the passenger jet colliding with a helicopter. Unprecedented, Simon?
Well, mid-air collisions are not unprecedented. The records show that there's been about one a year so far this century. Most of them, though, involve small private aircraft, often helicopters, and of course they're all tragedies. But to have one involving a passenger jet, particularly in the US, where everything is so safety conscious, and especially in Washington, D.C., where this airport is only 3 miles south of the White House, is most definitely unprecedented. And there's lots of speculation, of course, about what might have happened, including from President Trump himself, who says it was a clear night, the lights on the plane were blazing, why didn't the helicopter go up or down or turn? And it's, but at this stage, all we can do is, of course, express deep sympathy with the loved ones of the victims. Just a horrible, horrible tragedy. And I hope also remind people that aviation, even though we've had 3 fatal accidents in the past 5 weeks, aviation is safer this decade than it has been in any previous decade. It is just an awful tragedy, and clearly the National Transportation Safety Board is already sending investigators. They will be looking at the situation once daylight comes. They will be listening to the air traffic control. They'll find the black boxes and piece together what happened. With any crash like this, Andrew, it's very often the case that there's a whole series of things that go wrong, and it may be, for example, that the air traffic controllers told their helicopter pilots to look out for a particular aircraft, and there may have been confusion about which aircraft they were looking at.
And something like this is so disruptive now for all of the travel in that area.
Well, yes, the airport has been closed. Flights began diverting immediately. It's not going to reopen until 11 o'clock at the earliest Washington time, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Meanwhile, of course, there is the terrible business of communicating the bad news to the loved ones of the victims.
All right, Simon, that's Simon Coulter, travel expert, talking about the extraordinary scenes in Washington. Let's bring in now Alistair Rossenshine, a former Boeing 747 pilot and aviation consultant. Alistair, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Terrible, terrible news. As a former pilot, for you, this must be especially difficult to comprehend.
Well, it is. I mean, you know, watching out for other aircraft is something which all pilots do at all times. When you're on the approach to land, of course, you're more focused on the runway. You expect the air traffic controllers to keep other aircraft well clear of you. You know, there is in this particular incident, there is a helicopter route. It's called Route 4, which is a northbound helicopter route on the east of the Potomac River. It runs along the eastern side, and that is presumably the flight path that the Black Hawk aircraft helicopter was flying. And you know, if you read the instructions on that route, helicopters have to be 200 feet or lower, and they must not be above that. And apparently, this accident happened at 400 feet, whilst the Bombardier aircraft was on final approach to runway 33. It had been moved from runway 01, so it had done this maneuver around. As Simon Calder also mentioned, that the helicopter pilot was asked by air traffic control whether or not they could see the Bombardier jet. Now, that's a fairly common instruction to be given so that a pilot flying visually can avoid hitting or, you know, coming too close to another aircraft. It is very easy to misidentify aircraft, especially at night. Over a town, there are plenty of lights everywhere. So, you know, this is a factor in this accident.
OK, thank you, Alistair. Alistair Rosenshine there, former Boeing 747 pilot aviation consultant. We will be, of course, bringing you any more news as we hear it from Washington. Of course, a new administration there. There's a new Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. He said, I've been secretary for a little over a day, and this tragedy is touching everybody.
Extraordinary as well how hands-on the President of the United States is. He's already tweeting about it and questioning why the helicopter didn't take evasive action.
Some of the passengers on board we're learning about as well this morning. As we said, it was a flight from Wichita, I believe it's pronounced, where there was a development training programme for figure skaters from the US, and several Russian-born but living in America skaters on there. One particular couple who, Shishkova and Nuamov, married couple who won the World Championship in pairs figure skating in 1994, a married couple who now coach their son, Maxim. Maxim is 23 and he's a prominent Team USA skater. The son, Maxim Naumov, he was not on the aeroplane, but his parents were. He'd been competing at the US Figure Skating Championships in Kansas as well, and terrible. It potentially, you know, lost his parents, who are also his coaches, and he competes at an international level. So the reverberations of this, particularly among the figure skating community, will be absolutely immense.
We'll keep you up to date on that breaking news throughout the day here on GB News. Now, increasing numbers of EU nationals are abusing the common travel arrangement with Ireland to enter the UK and work illegally, GB News can reveal.
That's right. Many Romanians and Bulgarians in particular are avoiding border checks by crossing from the Irish Republic, with others simply arriving on tourist visas and then finding work.
Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams who've increased the number of raids they carry out by a third since Labour came to power.
Under the cover of darkness, immigration officers and police move into this large agricultural business in North Wales.
No one up there?
No, I'm in touch.
They're on the hunt for immigrants working here illegally. And it doesn't take long to find their first suspect.
On you now.
The man they've detained is a Romanian national.
What's your permission to be in the UK? You got a visa to come to the UK?
For several years after Brexit, EU citizens enjoyed a grace period when authorities didn't prosecute those working here unlawfully. But now, if they breach the rules, they're treated like any other illegal immigrant.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
OK. Right. You're not allowed to work with that, OK? So at the moment, OK, you're under arrest, OK, for breaching the conditions of your leave to remain in the UK. Do you understand?
As fellow officers search for other suspects, the Romanian has walked back to his accommodation on the site for further checks.
Anybody else in your caravan?
Inside a cluster of caravans, more suspects, all Romanian, are being questioned.
Where is your passport?
Officers told me they see very significant numbers of Romanians and Bulgarians in particular abusing UK immigration rules to work here illegally. An increasingly popular means of arrival is through the common travel arrangement with Ireland, and some of those detained here may well have come through that route.
We've got individuals that we've got a trace of them exiting the country. We've got no trace of them coming into the country. So we haven't bottomed that out yet, but what we found in the past is that they will have come through Ireland and then through the common travel area, you know, avoiding the controls.
In nearby offices, another group of Romanians are being questioned. Although the Home Office was unable to provide us with a detailed breakdown of the number of EU nationals arrested on immigration offences over the past year, this enforcement team told me it's definitely on the rise, and many are coming through Ireland.
Not just the EA nationals that are going through Ireland, it's other foreign nationals, because it can be like the back door into the UK. So you've got the small boats where people are coming in illegally. You've got other clandestine that come in the back of lorry, but obviously there's the abuse of the CTA as well.
Many others are simply arriving on tourist visas and then finding employment in breach of the law. As officers question the suspects with the help of interpreters over the phone, it quickly becomes apparent why some are willing to take the risk.
OK, so how much do you get paid?
1,000 a week.
£1,000 per week.
For those employing illegal workers, these enforcement raids can be very costly indeed, with fines of up to £45,000 per illegal worker. Yet right across the country, thousands of employers continue to flout the law. Since Labour came to power, immigration enforcement raids have increased by more than a third over the same period the year before. But despite more than 3,000 arrests over the past 6 months, it's still only a tiny fraction of the number of illegal immigrants here, with unofficial estimates putting that figure at more than 1.5 million. Mark White, GB News, North Wales.
Delighted to say Mark White's in the studio with us. Mark, great story, well done. The first question, though, are they going to be deported? Will they be deported?
Well, that's the intention, of course, to send them back to their home countries. And many will go voluntarily, having been caught, and maybe they'll come back again in a month or two's time, probably through that same route coming into Ireland and then just up through the borderless zone into the UK. And others may be forcibly removed, but most of them will eventually go, the Home Office tell us.
I'm a bit torn about this, Mark, because I like to see people doing a hard day's work. I'd rather people came here and wanted to do the work in agriculture that apparently are lazy young men in this country.
10 million economically inactive in this country.
So could these people work here legally if they wanted to?
Well, yes, there are, and there are exemptions as well for the likes of, the sort of agricultural community to get individuals into work within that sector as well. You're right, many people in the UK might not want to do that work, but you heard there that £1,000 a week can be made by these people coming from countries like Romania, where the cost of living there is much reduced. The money they can earn there is very significantly less. So you can see what the lure is. But 1.5 million people here, at least, no one really knows for sure, working in the illegal economy. It's got to be addressed, and the government acknowledges that as well. Should say that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has been speaking to our political editor Christopher Hope, on this very issue.
We need much stronger action on the illegal working, and that's why since the election we have increased the raids for illegal working by 30% and increased arrests by 25% alongside increasing returns by over 20%. That's just since the election, and that's because we've strengthened the returns and enforcement teams operating in the Home Office, because we do see that as a priority. The problem with the illegal working is it's breaking the rules, it's breaking our laws, but it's also often you have people being exploited by unscrupulous employers.
Being exploited, they're earning £1,000 a week.
And are the employers aware that they're illegal?
Well, I think in many instances, yes, they are. They will tell the authorities that no, they're not. Right. But the check sometimes is, you know, as little as really just looking at passports, and, you know, that's not a proper check to see whether someone has the right to work. And of course, some of these, or many of these, people will have kind of forged documents as well.
OK, Mark, thank you so much. Mark White there. Now, up next, why are taxpayers footing the bill for new clothes and shoes for illegal migrants?
Why, indeed?
The figure is shocking of how much we're spending per day on giving clothes to people who step off dinghies. Cal Malone and Jonathan Liss up next to discuss that. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting, because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels, or
really?
You'll see these, well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of
robots.
Yeah, I mean, technically they're a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of
a humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of you know, Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of, you know, little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes,
like Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, they're like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way things, the way
But I think
things
Milton
are delivered.
Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town. And
Exactly, that's why they're in Milton Keynes.
And I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. You know, when I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
10:25, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce, Bev Turner, broadcaster Cal Malone's here. Been quiet for a change. And political commentator Jonathan Liss is here with his jumper.
Yeah, well, actually, his pants this week are interesting. They're good.
Oh, thanks.
Wide, brown.
Yeah.
Right.
Unusual. I was telling him that we had the lovely oh God, his name's gone out of my head now. Suit on last week, lovely tie.
Bill Rammell.
Labour gentleman.
Bill Rammell. Former minister.
Suit and tie. Looked like he'd gone to a bit of an effort, but anyway.
Did you listen to the Chancellor's speech yesterday?
Well, you know, I did
Bev and
try.
I had to sit through
tuned
all of
into
it.
your show briefly, but even I lost the will to live. Much as I love you both after a while. but you can't not be belligerent. I mean, I've read all the papers this morning, but what it sounded like to me is that it sounded like a 45-minute begging letter for her job. And everything she talked about was stuff that was going to happen 10 years down the line. It's like, you know, I know I've cocked up, but give me 10 years and I'll sort it out, I promise. And no one's going to do that.
Come on, we can't...
No, let me finish. She talked like the economy was powering ahead when actually it's on the floor. We're flatlining.
It's stagnating and has been for many years. Look,
no, it has not been for many years.
It has been stagnating. When was the last time that the economic growth was more than 0.3%?
From when they took over until the end of the year, there was zero growth. Bank of England announced that.
Look, we can't criticise the government for not being interested in growth and then criticise them for announcing growth policies. Look, growth doesn't happen overnight. We know that.
Doesn't take 10 years.
The problem that we've had in this country for such a long time is short-termism, where governments announce things and that can be delivered or can't be delivered. In this case, in the next year. There are some things that take years and years. We know that.
If this was going to kickstart growth, why is the flagship announcement Heathrow Airport when she's admitted now that she hopes to get a development consent order signed within the lifetime of this Parliament? That means they're not going to do. They're not going to put a shovel in the land before the next election. It's a con.
Michael O'Leary said yesterday, because the projections are 30 years. Michael O'Leary said yesterday it could take up to 50 years. He all but called her a fool yesterday. He did. What was the word he said? He said she's had 5 years to prepare for being Chancellor, and she's actually screwed it all up in her first budget. And
well, he's angry there for not abolishing air passenger
What
duty.
scares me about her is she sees what's happening. She sees what her policies have done so far, and she's not admitting it. She's been told by business leaders that the rumours are there's like 150,000 job losses so far, but she's been told by businesses that they are being crippled by the NI rise. She's not listening. She's just saying it'll work eventually. She doesn't look at the mistakes. She needs to just say, OK, that was wrong, and this is what I'll try and do. But spewing out a whole load of policies that are long-term policies that may or may never happen, and they won't happen because she's going to be out after.
Carol, no Chancellor is going to reverse a planned tax rise 2 months before it comes into effect.
Because they look stupid.
Obviously, the NI rise is done. It will happen. It can be re-evaluated later in the Parliament. What we need Chancellors and governments to do in general is to think beyond the life cycle of a single Parliament, because one of the reasons that Britain is so paralysed, has become so incredibly uncompetitive, is that no government's thinking about long-term investment in infrastructure. You'll agree with that, Andrew, won't you?
What I don't understand is that whenever any of these big infrastructure projects have been mooted by the previous government, Starmer and Reeves were queuing up to say that we couldn't possibly afford it for the sake of the planet. We couldn't afford more aviation fuel in the sky. Well, suddenly they seem OK with that. So why?
She voted against the expansion of the airport in her own constituency. Yes, she did.
She voted for a third runway at Heathrow.
She voted against the expansion of Leeds Airport in her own constituency.
On environmental grounds.
Not all airports.
She's a hypocrite.
Not all airports are going to be the same. Look, I happen to be against, personally, Heathrow expansion because I think it's too difficult to meet it with the M25.
But that's so interesting because you are on the political left and even you don't agree with what she wants.
Well, a lot of people on the left hate.
Who's she doing it for, then?
Well, look, I definitely agree that we need growth, and more importantly, we need to redistribute that growth. But for me, for example, the airport expansion should come at Gatwick, where the space is already there. Obviously, we need to balance that with climate commitments, and that's
gone out the window.
Well, if we can find it, no, aviation is a fact of life.
Massive
it will be expanding all the
foreign-owned
time.
corporations, and that's what I find so fascinating by this, because there's nothing at the moment, Carol. If you're a decorator in Reading or a car mechanic in Manchester, do you care about Heathrow having an extra
you really
runway?
Don't. And this is the thing. This is the thing about Libby. They all the analysts today have said what she said yesterday shows a complete misunderstanding of how the economy works. You have to. Growth is one thing, but to get growth, you have to have investment. And we know all the investors are leaving. A millionaire is leaving this country every 45 minutes. We know how much money is pouring out, and she's pretending that that's not happening. And you're right. what we need to do now, Heathrow's fine. All these things 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line. The economy is flatlining now. And nothing she said yesterday is actually going to help that. And that's the problem.
Let's quickly talk about migration. What are we doing to these migrants who cross the channel illegally?
Yeah.
Instead of sending them back, what are we doing with them, Malone?
Well, you know what we're doing? We're spending £3,000 a day giving them new clothes.
I can't believe this.
We were already giving them mobile phones and all the rest of it. Now we're giving them free clothes, free hotels. I mean, you know, if you were the plumber working in Reading, and you're reading this now,
enraged.
You're saying, you know, and what about, you know, I was thinking when I read this today, they're spending something like it's £4 million bill over 3 years, and they've got a warehouse the size of the biggest Marks and Spencer store you can imagine, where every size of every piece of clothing is there.
I don't know why we give them any clothing.
Why are we giving them any clothing?
No, we wouldn't give them anything.
But do they give the homeless on our streets clothing? No, the homeless on our streets have to depend on charity. Well, maybe they should, but maybe they should start there first.
It's
That's
not,
the
look,
point.
if people are coming here, we owe them a basic...
Illegally, yes.
Because there are no legal alternatives. We owe them a basic duty of care. Now, if they have been soaked through...
They're coming here because it's free hotels and free clothes.
They've been soaked through in their clothes. No one is coming
Their
here
choice.
for free hotels.
Their choice.
No one.
They've got money to pay for if they've got the money, Jonathan.
They don't have any possessions. If their clothes are soaking through, if there's fuel on the clothes, what are they supposed to do?
They paid thousands to cross the channel. Then they can afford to buy their own clothes when they get here.
£4,000 they pay to get across.
This is going to outrage people.
They would love to be working immediately, but obviously we know under the previous government they delayed the processing of the claims.
These people come because they come from poor countries where they probably work but for no money. They come here knowing they're going to get put in a 4-star hotel, knowing they're going to get benefits, knowing they're going to get free clothes, knowing they're going to get free health.
And then they'll disappear.
No intention of working. There was a poll the other day that said a lot of them don't work at all and have no intention of it.
Look, their claims are processed. It's decided if they are legitimate asylum seekers.
Another story leaked from the civil service last week saying most people are being granted asylum who shouldn't be, just to get the numbers down, just to make it look good. So this is not right. We're growing by 1 million a year in this country. It can't be the case.
I think that it's completely legitimate to allow people to have a basic standard of welfare while they are being supervised by the authorities of this country. We cannot let people go sick or worse as a civilised country. I'm sorry.
Do you not think that it should be maybe up to charities? Because there's so many charities queuing up to want to clothe and feed people who arrive here. Then they if they want to...
Do you do this already, Bev?
If they want to arrive...
Why the taxpayer? Why the taxpayer?
These are very, very small sums of money.
It's not a bit. Added to the £8 million a day for the hotels, and they're not small sums of money. They're huge sums of money.
But it's also more that it's just the incentive, isn't it? It's the fact that there is no disincentive.
I just don't believe that people are going to take their lives into their own hands for the prospect of a hotel room and a Travelodge and an old coat. At the other end, that's
brand new coats. I think
that's not why people are.
They get
you can argue why people are coming here.
Jackets,
that's not
puffer jackets, coats, hats, gloves, and they get given flip-flops in the summer. Everything for every season.
Do you think they get Ray-Ban sunglasses as well?
Well, they'll probably get some kind of.
Perhaps Lord Ali could buy some clothes as he buys half the cabinet votes.
We need to move on. We need to move on. Carol and Jonathan will be back with us in the next hour. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say. Aaron Armstrong is waiting with our very latest news headlines. Here he is.
Very good morning to you. It's 10:34. Our headlines. Dozens of people are feared dead after a passenger plane collided with a US Army helicopter in mid-air in Washington, D.C. The latest live shots here from the US Capitol, where more than 300 emergency responders, including police divers and a whole range of boats, are searching for survivors. Now, 64 people were on board the American Airlines flight, including crew. 3 soldiers were on the Black Hawk helicopter, which was on a training flight when the accident took place. It happened just before 9 p.m. local time in the United States. At least 19 bodies have been recovered, although authorities in Washington say they do not know still if there are any survivors. Meanwhile, 3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai nationals who've been held in Gaza are expected to be released by Hamas this morning. One is already free. 20-year-old Agam Berger, a female soldier, was handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas. It, much like last week, is one of those carefully choreographed scenes. This was in Jabalia in the north of the Gaza Strip. She was then, as I say, given to the Red Cross before being transferred to the Israeli military at the border. She'll be on her way to hospital now, where no doubt she'll be reunited with her family. Two civilians, the 29-year-old Arbel Yehud and 80-year-old man Gadi Moses, are expected to be released. They've been in captivity for more than 15 months. Live pictures here from Han Yunis in southern Gaza. So the swap of this fragile ceasefire is underway. The Thai hostages, well, they've not been named yet. Their release would be unilateral by Hamas, so wouldn't constitute part of the deal. 110 Palestinian prisoners are to be freed later. They've been in Israeli jails and they'll be released in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. And some live pictures from Tel Aviv in Israel, where those families of captives have been gathering, many of whom have been extremely critical of the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and how his government have prosecuted the war. More on that as soon as we get it here on GB News. Water bills are set to rise in England and Wales by an average of £123 per household from April. It means a typical bill will go up from £480 per year to £603. That's a 26% rise. The industry body, Water UK, says it's all to fund infrastructure projects and will help struggling customers with their bills, although consumer groups warn that more households will fall into debt because of it. Fewer than half of parents think children should know how to use books correctly before starting primary school, with some instead trying to swipe as if using a tablet. Only 3 in 4 parents think children should be toilet trained before starting reception, according to a poll for the early years charity Kindred Squared. It found teachers believe children are entering primary school with a delay in basic motor skills and a lack of core strength because of excessive screen time. And the survey found a huge disparity between what teachers and parents consider their children to be school ready. Retail crime is at an all-time high, with more than 2,000 incidents reported per day. Last year, over 70 incidents alone included use of a weapon, with double that amount reported in the previous year. Thefts have also reached 20 million incidents, costing retailers £2.2 billion. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with more at the top of the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Still to come this morning, is it too expensive to eat healthily? We're going to be debating that next. I mean, how much is an egg? Porridge?
Quite.
Potatoes?
An apple? A carrot?
Well, you know how we feel about that, but we're going to be debating it. Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost. Also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead. Plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland. Could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland. And quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In County Down, the A51 remains closed along Tandragee Road in Guildford because of a fallen tree. In West Yorkshire, the A61 is partly blocked by an accident on Barnsley Road at Woolly, causing queues. On the M6 in Greater Manchester, 2 lanes are closed southbound after an accident between junctions 26 and 25, up to the M58 with queues from junction 27. At Standish in Conway on the A55, the inside lanes closed westbound after an accident between junctions 22 and 21, from Old Colwyn to Colwyn Bay, causing queues. In Gwynedd, the A487 is closed each way southwest of Bangor, between the Avelin-Helly roundabout and the A55 at Park Menai, causing queues. In Rutland, the A606 is closed at Langham after an accident. In Herefordshire, the A438 is closed each way between Bath Street and Upper Dormington after an accident. And on the M25 in Essex, 2 lanes are closed clockwise, where a lorry is broken down just after junction 27 for the M11, causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Bev and Andrew here until midday. Now, do you have to be rich to be healthy?
No.
I don't think so. Well, the Food Foundation...
We were healthy as kids and we weren't rich.
Absolutely. Well,
we were poor.
That's right.
Relatively.
Mum wouldn't let us have any snacks in the house. I've never quite forgiven her. Everybody else had biscuits.
Yeah.
We didn't. She did do home baking, though, so we didn't do too badly, but it was all homemade.
Mum made homemade pie, meat pie, apple pie.
Well, the Food Foundation's annual report has found that the price of healthier food has increased by twice the rate of unhealthy options in the UK.
So we're asking you this, do you have to be wealthy to eat healthy? So let's have a discussion about this with our favourite pharmacist and health expert, Thorin Govind, and you know who he is, former Fat Families presenter, Steve Miller. Steve Miller, let's go to you first. You're pretty healthy. You don't have to be wealthy, do you, to eat healthily?
No. No, I think it's more challenging now because of inflation or whatever, but there are so many great things that you can do. I've even made a list for you. So you can buy frozen fruit and vegetables rather than fresh. There's, good nutrition there. You can make it a habit to shop at the end of the day and get the bargains, where they put the labels on, the fruit and veg reduced. I also deliberately went out and I found that I could buy 6 apples for 69p. I can buy 6 little fillets of fish for £2.49. I can get 4 large oranges for £1.50. So I think it's very important to think like a winner rather than a whiner.
Thorin, we're living in a culture where everyone's got an excuse for everything they don't want to do and everybody feels like a victim of something else rather than taking responsibility for their own health, don't we? That's what the problem is here.
Well, look, the challenges on our health are bigger than ever. We've got people scrolling through social media rather than thinking about what they want to eat. But I do think that wealth allows people to go and shop at those higher end supermarkets, to get the organic fruits and vegetables, to, get the produce which is fresher. And you just mentioned there about going at a specific time to the supermarket to go and get those yellow stickers. Well, actually, I think that's coming from a position of privilege because not everyone can time their whole day to go and shop at a certain time in the supermarkets. I think as well, in lower income areas, the access to, the actual stores.
Oh, have we lost? I think Thorin's line is just breaking up a little bit.
Well, let's put that point to Steve.
Well,
you're a privileged boy, Steve. You can go at the end of the working day to a supermarket and get the reduced food.
My council house upbringing, where money was tight, made me look for solutions. And it's your back. And And it was always about looking for solutions. And, you know, we've also got, you've got to remember, we've got markets. Another idea to make it less expensive is to do batch cooking as well, and to freeze the grub that you've made that's healthy. You can also save the leftovers. So many people throw food away unwisely. And also, you know, and on the stronger side of it, and I am going to say it, if you are on benefits, start looking for a job. You know, if it's a struggle, start looking for a job, maybe give up the cigs as well. We do need a bit of straight talking. Now, I know that won't be very popular with some people, but it's a fact. We've got a lot of people in this country that's not working because they can't be bothered. The benefit system's too easy, and that does have a relationship in terms of, you know, where you can shop and what you can buy. That's the reality of the world we're in.
We all know the house on the street, Steve, where there might be people who aren't really working, and that is the house that constantly has the motorbike arriving with the takeaways on the back of it.
Oh, listen, I've worked with these families. I know the tricks. I know that they still go on holiday. I know they have the laptop on the lap, staying in the sofa watching the telly. That's the reality of the world. But to be fair, it is more challenging these days to eat healthily on a budget. And I hope people, you know, start to take some of my practical common sense recommendations. We can't just keep talking about how difficult it is. We have to give people solutions. And I think that's what GB News viewers want. They don't want to whinge all day. They want solutions. They want action. And I hope that some people take some of those on board.
Give us an example, Steve. And I'm putting you on the spot a bit here. Give me a healthy breakfast that's cheap, a healthy lunch that's cheap, and a healthy tea that's cheap.
Well, I mean, a healthy breakfast could be a banana and oranges. I mean, you could share those, and that could be for some
boiled
porridge
egg
or something like that, or a boiled egg. You know, a boiled egg. And then at lunchtime, excuse me, then it could be, you know, some salady type stuff. I mean, everyone thinks this stuff is really expensive, but once you put it all together, it's not. And then for tea, dinner, or whatever you call it, you could again have some healthy fruit, healthy vegetables with some fish. I found fish, like I said, for £2.49 for 6 fillets of fish. I deliberately went out and found it.
Yeah, baked potato. Can't beat a baked potato. Cheap.
I have 2 a week, every week.
Yeah.
Sometimes with beans.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes with cheese.
Bit of grated cheese, some tomatoes on the side.
Yeah, but people would be saying to you, it's all right for you two. You've got a lot of money earning what you earn. You see, that's the culture we have now. We have this whiny culture rather than a winning culture.
Yeah.
People need to look for solutions rather than moaning all the time when it comes to food, affordability, and also weight loss. Stop moaning, start doing.
All right, Steve. That's the former Fat Families presenter, Steve Miller. We're sorry we lost Doran Govin, but her line broke down. So now we're going to...
You know what? It's made me hungry, that. I'm now wondering what to have for my lunch. Not even had any breakfast yet. I'm starving this morning.
I've got a biscuit in my bag.
Oh, of course he has. He's always got a sneaky little biscuit. He doesn't necessarily share them, but
I share it. I bought the team a bag of biscuits.
Well, that's not very healthy, is it, Andrew?
No.
Pierce, a biscuit.
Well,
We're
one
talking about
biscuit
healthy
doesn't
food.
hurt.
One biscuit doesn't hurt. But that's the point. I think, you know, I like my slow cooker. That's cheap.
I've got one. My sister bought me one.
Have you used it yet?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You know, mince, cheap mince. Doesn't have to be the best quality mince, but at least you're getting some protein. Carrot, onion, tin of tomatoes.
Chicken casserole.
Honestly, tune in every day for our cooking with Andrew and Bev.
Who needs that? What's her name? The football woman.
The football woman?
She's the cookery writer.
Nigella Lawson?
No.
She's not a football woman.
Norwich County. Delia Smith. Who needs Delia Smith when you've got Andrew and Bev? Although I do think Delia Smith's cookery books are brilliant.
I'm dying. Right, now, moving on this morning. If you're in search of some winter sun, I'm listening to my chest. Here's the forecast.
I'm going to put my mask on again.
Can you keep it on? Top European holiday destinations. There you go.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures, and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite, she wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, oh, it's happened to me.
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost 700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet? I just
and then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, this can't be true, come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she's had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, 10:53 this morning. We're going to be bringing you up to speed as we get the news from Washington, D.C., the latest on this crash this morning. American Airlines plane collided with an Army helicopter.
We've been speaking to our US correspondent, and so far they've recovered 19 bodies from the Potomac River, where the plane and helicopter ended up. Extraordinary, Christian, extraordinary when you consider 2 miles from the White House. The President probably heard it.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us today with plenty of sunny spells, but there will be some showers around, particularly towards the northeast of Scotland, where an area of low pressure is moving away. It continues to bring tightly packed isobars, so a strong and gusty northwest wind, along with some showery rain, particularly for Shetland and Orkney. Meanwhile, a few showers just affecting the northwest of England for a time, western Scotland, North Wales, for example. But for many, it's simply a dry day with long spells of sunshine and feeling pleasant enough, where we've got light winds in the south, 7 or 8 Celsius, colder further north, 3 or 4 in the north of Scotland, along with that gusty wind. Towards the end of the afternoon, the clouds will thicken across Northern Ireland, and we'll see some light outbreaks of rain start to move into the Western Isles, but on the whole it's a clear end to the day, and as a result temperatures will fall away across central and eastern Scotland, eastern England as well. Those temperatures slipping overnight with a frost forming in places, just some patchy cloud here and there, otherwise extensive clear spells for the first part of the night at least. However, for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, soon enough areas of rain move in, and as that rain moves into the cold air across Scotland and northern England, it will be falling as hill snow, but at lower levels expect some rain. Now that's going to move into central and southeast England by the end of the night, along with a lot of low clouds, so gloomy and damp start, but brighter skies on the way for Northern Ireland in the wake of that. But it will be a wet start for the Midlands, the south and southeast of England. Some heavy rain in places, along with a blustery breeze. The rain does ease away, it pushes through, but it stays dull and gloomy across the Midlands, east and southeast England. Brighter for the north of Scotland, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest, with some decent sunshine by the end of the day.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far, £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
We won 25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Don't miss out, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's Thursday, the 30th of January, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, tragedy in the sky this morning, just miles away from the White House. An American Airlines flight has collided mid-air into a military helicopter just seconds from landing. 67 people were on board the aircraft. A major rescue operation now gets underway.
Active operation that's going to last many hours as we continue to work through recovery efforts and rescue operations.
I'm afraid hope is fading because of the conditions and the freezing cold which are disrupting rescues, but families are sharing their devastation and some their hope.
I'm just praying that somebody's pulling her out of the river right now as we speak. That's all I can pray for. I'm just praying to God.
When was the last time you spoke with her?
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes.
And to how this could have happened, the CEO of American Airlines has spoken out.
This is a difficult day for all of us at American Airlines, and our efforts now are focused entirely on the needs of our passengers, crew members, partners, first responders, along with their families and loved ones.
Also coming up, a GB News exclusive as Mark White joins an immigration raid to find out how many migrants are exploiting an EU loophole to enter Britain.
What visa have you got? Work visa?
For 6 months, yeah.
6 months? Visit visa?
Yes.
Oh, okay, right. You're not allowed to work with that, okay? So at the moment, okay, you're under arrest.
Well, the small boats are, of course, the visible manifestation of the migrant crisis, but the vast majority of those coming here to work illegally arrive by much more mundane means.
And more headache for Labour and the Tories. A new poll has shown that reform is the new opposition.
And crime on the rise, a surge in shoplifting with 2,000 incidents a day now being reported. Shopkeepers, retailers are crying out for help. I was in my little M&S the other day. Very nice man who's in there. He likes security, but he's just very helpful. He came and said, I think you may have, when you were last in here, your card didn't connect properly, so he showed me the bill, and I said,
"Oh,
actually,
yeah, Andrew."
No,
yes.
I said, actually, that's not mine. I'm too mean to buy bottled water. It comes out of a tap in our house, and I don't buy prawns in M&S. But you know how much the bill was?
Go on.
£98. So
Why
somebody
did you think it was you?
Because it was obviously the till next to me just got confused, and yeah. So he said, I know you're very honest, but I said, do you think they did it deliberately? So sometimes I think people do the card and it doesn't go through and off you go.
Did he really say, I know you're very honest?
He did.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh.
But he did ask me.
I need to dig into this story. That's the first I've heard of it, ladies and gentlemen.
Last
so I will
week.
find out a little bit more of that before we come back. Here's your news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 11 o'clock. Our top stories, as you have been hearing. Dozens of people are feared dead in Washington, D.C. after a passenger plane crashed into the Potomac River after colliding with a US Army helicopter. Live shots here. Emergency responders are still searching for survivors. 64 people, including crew, were on the American Airlines flight. 3 soldiers were on the Black Hawk helicopter. At least 19 bodies have been recovered. Well, this was the plane coming into land at Reagan Washington National Airport seconds before the collision. The helicopter was on a training flight. It all happened just before 9 p.m. local time. The first major US commercial air crash since 2009. Now, those rescue operations are still ongoing, although the difficult conditions have been described as extremely tough. Washington, D.C.'s Fire Chief John Donnelly has admitted at a press conference that they're not aware if there are any survivors. The Mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, says their thoughts are with the families of those involved.
So certainly I speak for the people of Washington, 700,000 of us who are extremely sorry for the families who are experiencing loss tonight. And so we want you to know that we will continue to work with American Airlines to share information as frequently as possible and make sure that we're getting accurate information.
3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai nationals held in Gaza are to be released by Hamas this morning. And things have already started happening. 20-year-old Agam Berger, a female soldier, has been handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas. The 20-year-old hostage was released in Jabalia in northern Gaza earlier before being transferred to the Israeli military by the Red Cross. 2 civilians, 29-year-old Arbel Yehud on the left and the 80-year-old Gadi Moses on the right of your picture are to be released. In fact, Israeli media say that they have now been handed over to the Red Cross. Nothing official on that yet. We'll bring it as soon as we have it. We can bring you some live pictures from Gaza. This is Han Yunis in the south of the Strip. So this third swap of a fragile ceasefire is underway. Huge crowds of Palestinians there. Now, the Thai hostages, well, if they are released, that will be a unilateral move by Hamas, so not part of the official deal. And in exchange, 110 Palestinian prisoners will be freed later from Israeli jails. Let's bring you some live pictures from Israel now. This is the city of Tel Aviv, where families of those captives have been gathering, many of whom have been extremely critical of the Israeli government and their Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Increasing numbers of people from the EU are abusing the common travel arrangement with Ireland to enter the UK to work illegally. GB News can exclusively reveal that many people, Romanians and Bulgarians in particular, are avoiding border checks by crossing into Northern Ireland from the Republic. Others are simply arriving on tourist visas before finding work. GB News was given exclusive access to accompany immigration enforcement teams. And the number of raids they've been carrying out are up by a third since the election of the Labour Party in July last year. Water bills set to rise in England and Wales by an average £123 per household from April. That means that your typical bill will go up to £603 per year, a rise of 26%. The industry body Water UK says it's all about funding infrastructure projects and helping struggling customers, although consumer groups are warning that the rise in bills will mean more households fall into debt. Fewer than half of parents think children should know how to use books correctly before starting primary school, with some pupils trying to swipe as if they're using a tablet. Only 3 in 4 parents think children should be toilet trained before starting school. This is all according to a poll for the early years charity Kindred Squared. It found that teachers believe many children are entering primary school with delays in basic motor skills and a lack of core strength because of excessive screen time. And it also found a huge disparity between when teachers and parents consider those pupils to be school ready. Authorities say retail crime is spiralling out of control, with more than 2,000 incidents reported per day. The British Retail Consortium has found incidents including racial and sexual abuse, physical assault and threats with weapons have reached 3 times the level they were in 2020. That includes 70 incidents per day involving a weapon. That's more than double the previous year. Theft has also reached an all-time high, with more than 20 million incidents, or more than 55,000 per day. That is costing retailers some £2.2 billion a year. And Sir Keir Starmer has praised John Prescott for his tenacity and vision and fighting spirit ahead of the former Deputy Prime Minister's funeral service. More than 300 family members, friends and colleagues are expected to attend the service at Hull Minster a little later this afternoon. Senior figures from the past and current Labour governments are expected to attend. Lord Prescott, who served as Deputy Prime Minister under Sir Tony Blair between 1997 and 2007, died on November the 20th last year at the age of 86. Those are the latest headlines. I'm back with more a little later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're bringing you this breaking news this morning about the tragedy in Washington, D.C. A passenger jet with 67 people on board crashed into the Potomac River only 2 miles from the White House after colliding with a US Army helicopter.
Yeah, 19 bodies have so far been recovered. Coast Guard, police divers, rescue and ambulance units remain at the scene, but the conditions are not good and it's freezing cold.
So joining us now is Stephen Edgington, GBNews' US correspondent, who is based in Washington, D.C. Morning, Steve. So just after 6 o'clock in the morning there in D.C., do you know more on the ground than we've been able to ascertain here in London?
Well, it looks like the plane crashed early last night, 9 p.m, and it crashed as it was coming into the airport, as it was trying to land from Kansas. And it crashed with a military helicopter, a Black Hawk helicopter. More than 300 emergency workers are now trying to find bodies and survivors on the Potomac River. Now, it's really difficult conditions. The Potomac has quite a strong current, and it's incredibly cold tonight in Washington, D.C. So it looks unlikely that there's going to be many survivors, as you say. US media reports that at least 19 bodies have been found so far. 64 people were on the plane and 3 soldiers were on the Black Hawk helicopter. President Trump has actually tweeted saying that this was a tragedy that could have been prevented, and he's already speculating about what happened last night. It looks unclear as to why the helicopter, which was on a training mission, couldn't see the plane or wasn't aware of where the plane was when it was landing. And it looks like the plane was following all of the correct regulations and was following air traffic control. So this really is a tragedy, the first US aircraft crash to happen in 17 years on US soil. And I think people here are pretty devastated in DC, waiting for their loved ones. And the people on the plane, we know, were the US figure skater team and the Russian figure skating team. So it's a real tragedy here in Washington, D.C.
It seems all the remarkable to us, Steve, tuning in from Britain, that this happened just within 2 miles of the White House, which should be the most secure airspace in the whole of the United States.
That's right. Ronald Reagan Airport, which is where this crash happened, is one of 2 airports in Washington, D.C. And the airport is very, very centrally located. It's located, as you say, just near the White House, near the Washington Monument. And there's a huge amount of military planes and helicopters that are flying in D.C. As you walk around D.C., you see lots and lots of military helicopters flying very, very low. And coming into Reagan National Airport, it's an incredibly complicated and complex landing for pilots. It's one of the most complicated airports, apparently, in the United States for pilots to land in because of all the regulations to do with the military helicopters and so on that are flying around Washington, D.C. constantly. So it was obviously a very difficult situation. But again, these regulations are in place to try and stop military helicopters, military aircraft from crashing into commercial aircraft. And it seems that last night there was a significant failure. Some people were already starting to put the blame on the military helicopter and on the advice that they were getting. Because, as I said, it looks like the plane that was flying in from Kansas, the American Airlines flight, was following air traffic control perfectly. They weren't doing anything wrong as they were going into to land in Reagan National Airport. So this really is, I think a lot of people are asking questions. President Trump, as I said, has already tweeted out pretty much immediately after the crash, saying that something very serious has happened here and it looks like it could have been prevented. So I think there's some speculation as to what's happened, particularly with the Black Hawk helicopter and how it managed to not see this aircraft straight in front of it and how it didn't know that this plane was landing into Reagan National Airport.
Training flight, whether that suggests the pilot was perhaps inexperienced?
That's possible. I mean, as you say, it's a training flight. We don't know the details of the pilot, and we don't actually know what's happened to the 3 soldiers who were in the Black Hawk helicopter last night. What we do know is that 19 bodies of passengers on that plane have been recovered on the Potomac. And it's a real tragedy. I've seen videos of some of the family members of people who were on that plane. And, they're looking at the Potomac River this morning and seeing, freezing conditions. For the last few weeks, Washington, D.C. has been very, very cold. We've had, a very cold winter and January. And I've seen the Potomac, frozen over in many, many places over the last few days. So it's a really, really difficult situation, I think, for the families of those on that plane. And I think, there's some serious questions that need to be answered. And this is a real struggle, I think, as well, a real challenge for the new Trump administration. They're only just getting in place. The Transport Secretary was sworn in last week. The Defense Secretary was sworn in just a couple of days ago. So this is the first significant challenge and tragedy of the Trump administration. And, I think people here are apprehensive about how these new appointed officials are going to deal with this emergency. Hundreds of emergency responses, as I said earlier, are already out searching in Washington, D.C. overnight, and I expect that number will only increase.
OK, Steve, we'll have to leave it there. That's Steve Edgington, who is our GB News US correspondent in Washington, D.C. Now, an extraordinary opinion poll has revealed the public no longer trust the Prime Minister on Brexit and immigration.
That's right. Nearly two-thirds of voters believe that Sir Keir Starmer does not have a hold on immigration, many fearing a Brexit reversal also.
And this poll says that Labour would lose 130 seats if there was a general election, while Nigel Farage's Reform Party would drastically increase its number to 118 and effectively become the official opposition.
Extraordinary. Well, we're joined now by the Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde, an excellent pollster, Sir John Curtis. Morning, Sir John. Good to see you. So, obviously, there isn't an election now, so we have to take this in the context of the fact that this may be a signpost of things to come in the next 4 years. But how has this happened, this fall from grace from such a new Labour administration here?
Well, I'll give you two parts to an answer to that. One, of course, is that this was a government that came to power with a relatively low share of the vote, but also it's the support for Labour, and indeed for pretty much everybody else, was largely predicated on discontent with the previous Conservative government as opposed to enthusiasm for Labour. Sir Keir Starmer personally has never been a particularly popular politician. He's never endeared himself to the hearts of the public. And what Labour were meant to be about in government was a story that was never really told to us before the election. So I think there were weaknesses that were evident in opposition that have simply now come home to roost. But the second thing is that, what was it about the record of the last government that people were concerned about and primarily shift them away from the Conservatives? Well, one was the state of the economy. The other was the state of the National Health Service. The economy, by the government's own admission, is no better now than it was in July, and waiting times have not as yet started to go down. So the problems that the public are looking to see resolved are so far not being resolved, and a government that still doesn't have very much in the way of a clear, coherent narrative to tell the public, still rather shameful one, as in Rachel Reeves' speech yesterday, is suffering the consequences. I mean, that said, the scale of Labour's decline is particularly marked. Sure, all governments get into trouble, or virtual governments get into trouble in mid-term. But I think this government's pretty much setting the cephalological record with the speed and the extent to which its support's fallen away in the wake of the last general election.
So, John, there's nothing in this poll either to give any comfort to the Tories, because I see this puts their vote share down to 20%, down 4%, and they would actually lose seats, and they're already at an historic low with only 121 seats. Is it still too early to have a verdict on Kemi Badenoch, or have people just made their mind up already?
Well, I think as far as Kemi Badenoch is concerned, yes, her ratings are in negative territory. But the truth is, the ratings for all of our politicians are in negative territory because none of our political parties is particularly popular. I mean, I guess kind of just worth bearing in mind and drawing breath that here we have an opinion poll where no single party is getting more than 25% support. The last time we were in this kind of territory was back in the spring of 2019. In that case, the whole prospect that maybe the Brexit Party and the Democrats between them were doing serious damage to both Labour and the Conservatives was assuaged when Boris Johnson became Prime Minister and managed to pull the Leave coalition together that brought him to victory. The question is at the moment is who would be the Boris Johnson who might be able to turn things around. Sure, I mean, the one thing to realise, I mean, this is not the first poll to say that Reform are doing well, and the 24% it's got is pretty similar to other recent polls. But what the polling is also showing is that you might think that because it's Labour that's primarily down and Reform up, that what's simply happening is that voters are going from Labour to Reform. Well, some of them are, but actually what's happening to Labour's vote is that it's going almost equally to the Tories, to the Democrats, to the Greens, and yes, also to Reform. And that actually the Conservatives are still losing support to Reform at twice the rate that Labour are. Yes, Labour are now losing ground in a way that they weren't before July, but the Conservatives are still struggling to fend off Reform. So although the Conservatives are catching up a bit on Labour, all of that's being lost because of the ground that they're losing to Reform. So yes, the Conservatives still have to work out and worry about how to deal with the ground they've lost to Reform, while at the same time, of course, trying to take advantage of the difficulties that the current government is in.
OK, thank you, John. Sir John Curtis there. Yeah, it's interesting because the Greens have done well as well since July. They've gone up 6 points.
And they will take their votes probably almost certainly from the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And they'll take even more with the Heathrow Airport expansion.
Yeah, quite. Right, up next, Trump is getting tough on migrants again. He's moving some of them, illegal migrants to, or as he calls, illegal aliens. The language is very different while we're talking about irregular migration.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Illegal aliens, it's quite a difference. Well, he's moving them to Guantanamo Bay. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
He's,
in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Me.
Oh, there he goes. Nice. He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
Nice.
It's probably slightly more meaningful than having the villainous penguin.
Oh,
come on, Trey, you want to get Feathers McGraw? Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind of, you know, when you go abroad and you're Ibiza, Magaluf,
Tenerife,
and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that,
chest,
or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe, not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Bit more, yeah. I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean something.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll get something.
I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out with
that. Chaotic.
A disaster could happen. Then I walk out. And, oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
reading them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
.25, Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We've got the panel back. But before we head to them, let's just quickly return to those live shots from Washington, D.C. after the appalling plane collision. So, 19 bodies retrieved from the Potomac so far, but it's...
I would have expected that number to start to rise. I mean, there are apparently 300 first responders on site trying to basically come to terms with what has happened there. Obviously, we've been playing some footage this morning of one of the husbands of one of the passengers. At that point, he was saying, I still have hope that they can find her from the water. Of course, every minute that goes by in these temperatures, the likelihood of that becomes less.
Well, you were in Washington last week. You know how cold it is. It is freezing cold, and the Potomac is freezing cold. Apparently, part of last week's parts of the river were frozen.
Yeah. So this very fast-moving river, which, as Stephen Edgerton, our correspondent, said earlier, is so cold there at the moment that sections of it are actually completely frozen over, which is really unusual, and the conditions will be brutal for the rescuers and the responders there this morning. It's coming up to just almost 6:30 a.m. In Washington. The sun will be coming up in the next hour or so. So we will bring you any developments on that story as we know it.
Let's bring Carol Malone and Jonathan Lissing. Carol, the front page of the Daily Star, let's see if I can show this, if we can show this. They've got a picture of Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson. Can you see this?
Our new ambassador in Washington.
Yeah, he's our new ambassador, who did the most grovelling ever.
You know, it actually made me feel nauseous. It was that bad. This is our old slippery Mandelson, you know, who...
I called him a piece in the mail the other day, serpentine.
Well,
good word.
He is a slimy man.
In fact, we're just going to play the film again of Mandelson grovelling for his job.
Consider my remarks about President Trump as ill-judged and wrong. I think people have been impressed not just by the extraordinary second mandate that he's received from the American people, but the dynamism and energy with which he approached not just the campaign, but government as well. I think that he has won fresh respect. He certainly has from me.
And he went on to say the rest of that sentence, he said, I think President Trump could become one of the most consequential American presidents I have known in my adult life.
Well, he's certainly the first president to launch a coup against his own government.
Let's just say what he said not so very long ago. He said that Trump was little short of a white nationalist racist, and he said he was a danger to the world.
And he said that in 2019.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, but there was nothing in it for him now. Now he's got a job, glad handing it, living in a massive house.
Who's it supposed to be appealing to? No one believes that Mandelson has changed his opinion on Trump. They just believe that he wants a job. Why can't you just be... If you have integrity in politics, you say, yes, those were my opinions at the time, but the president's been elected,
I don't think you use the words integrity and Peter Mandelson in the same sentence.
That's a fair point.
You know, this is a guy who has already been investigated by the FBI. He hasn't even started the job yet. This is because of his links to working for Chinese banks. But, you know, the idea that he meant a single word of that is laughable.
But also, what terrible judgment does Keir Starmer have? Jonathan, is this the best he's got? What has he got on him that he has to send him out there to do that job?
If you had to find find a high-profile person on the centre or centre-left of British politics who hadn't had a bad word to say about Donald Trump. You would not be able to find a lot of...
No, what you do is you send a seasoned diplomat.
I think that's
what you do.
That is a completely legitimate argument, but it is also completely normal practice for governments of the day to send people, political ambassadors to the United States.
The last time it happened was 1977. The last time we did this in Washington was 1977.
But there are many other ambassadorial
and you're
posts,
forgetting
you
all
the
dodginess of Mandelson in his years in politics when he had to resign.
Twice from the cabinet.
Twice he had to resign for various terrible things. But, you know, it's interesting, and Bev said there's nothing in it for them. The house he's going to live in Washington has just had a multi-million-pound refurbishment on it. Imagine he's going to be feted, weighted on
makes me sick, Carol.
It'll make him even more unbearable than he already is.
Yeah. Also, he was on and off Epstein Island.
Yes, he was.
Multiple times. This is not a guy who is whiter than white. I mean, it's a risk with Starmer.
Spending time with Russian
I don't think that... I mean, look, if you were to talk about Epstein, there are an awful lot of people still...
But that doesn't matter.
Not as many photographs as him there.
And they're not going to the White House either.
And he's had to put a statement out regretting his connections to Epstein.
I'm not here to defend the
paedophile.
I'm saying that Mandelson is clearly a very strong political operator. He knows how to...
He's just lost all credibility by doing that. You mentioned
I don't
the word
like
integrity.
the guy, I can assure
There's no integrity in what he did in that speech. That's him grovelling to President Trump, who I suspect has insisted on it. That's him grovelling
he loves it. Well, that's the thing with Trump.
No
Trump
credibility. Never mind Trump. We're talking about Mandelson.
Yeah, I know, but...
Now has no credibility.
Trump loves it when people come grovelling to him after criticising him. That's his favourite kind.
So what I would do...
Like J.D. Vance called him America's Hitler, and now he's the Vice President. So
No, that's not strictly true. There was a text message exchange when J.D. Vance was at university saying, one day I think he's America's Hitler, and one day I think he's the saviour of the world. So let's put it in context as what he actually said.
He was a very strident Trump critic in the early days.
As lots of people have been, and that is OK. But for me, that's not the point. Like you say, it's very difficult to find Labour politicians, particularly, who haven't said things about Trump that Trump might find offensive.
Do you think we're going to get David Lammy apologising for calling him a
Well, he already has, in a way. He already has. He hasn't done it. It's not as grovelly as that.
No, exactly. There are ways of doing it,
That job is so important.
It's
embarrassing. If that is the best we've got, find me a good woman. There'd be some brilliant Labour-leaning women that could have done that role.
Trump just appointed as ambassador to Paris. His daughter's father-in-law. I mean, this is not a guy who
That doesn't interest us. What interests us is Mandelson grovelling on his hands and knees to get this posh job.
And the outgoing ambassador, Karen Pierce, Dame Karen Pierce, no connection to me, I can assure you, has held some of the biggest diplomatic jobs in the world.
Rod Little today suggested, would it be Lord Glass? Have I got that wrong? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who would be very good. I mean, there must be a million more people suited to the job than Mandelson.
Yeah. It stinks, the whole thing.
Yeah, it really does.
Right.
Can we talk about Kemi and the lettuce?
Yes, let's talk about Kemi and the lettuce.
He's determined to do this.
Go on, Jonathan.
Well, I just thought it was very, very funny.
Why?
Because, look, Kemi Badenoch is crashing and burning as Tory leader.
Not as much as the Labour leader, but
the Tories know they picked a dud. And, Carol, you say that. You would expect in normal times when the government is doing badly for the opposition party to be lapping up the votes and the support. That's not happening. The Conservatives are at exactly the same level they've been at since the election.
Today that says Starmer's popularity rating is minus 42.
Well, look, polls go up and down. Labour, we have roughly a three-way stalemate. Labour's leading some of them, Labour's sort of second in others. Reform are the beneficiaries of the lack of popularity of this government. Kemi Badenoch is not attracting any support. She is absolutely dire at Prime Minister's questions. Her own party know they chose them dud. And so Starmer was actually got a lot of laughs in the Commons yesterday by saying she's not a lawyer because she was talking about legal implications of something. She's not a leader, and I think the next
she was saying
this
to
rate
him,
should be the next lettuce.
Be a leader, not a lawyer. She said to him, be a leader, not a lawyer.
Well, he's saying that she wasn't
But if anyone's a wet lettuce in that pairing, it's him. I mean, you know...
he'll be in the job longer than she will.
Oh, can we talk about Trump and his plans to send 30,000 illegals?
Oh, we haven't got time,
Shame.
He's going to send 30,000 illegal immigrants.
Can we send some of ours there?
Well, wouldn't it be good?
Great.
But the thing is, he won't do it. That's the point.
And rather than giving them fancy clothes, we could put them in those orange jumpsuits.
I think you're going to get a lot of complaints about that.
Yeah,
anyway,
there we are.
You're probably not wrong.
Right. Aaron Armstrong is waiting very patiently for us in the news.
Sorry, Aaron.
Don't go anywhere.
Very good.
good morning to you. Our top stories. 3 Israeli hostages and 5 Thai nationals held in Gaza have now been released by Hamas. The 20-year-old Agam Berger, a female soldier, was handed over to the Red Cross in Jabalia in northern Gaza earlier before being transferred to the Israeli military at the border. And in the last few minutes, the Israeli military has said a further 7 hostages have been handed over. That includes the civilians Arbel Yehud on the left of your picture and the 80-year-old Gadi Moses on the right of your picture. They, along with 5 Thai nationals, are making their way to IDF forces in the Gaza Strip before being transferred to Israel. So probably some celebratory scenes in Tel Aviv and across the country, where families of those held captive and many others have been gathering. They have been waiting expectantly there for hours. They've been very critical of the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, who has prosecuted this war. But they have now secured the release of 3 more prisoners as part of this latest ceasefire deal. 110 Palestinians are expected to be freed from Israeli jails in exchange a little later. Search and rescue operation is ongoing in Washington, D.C. Dozens of people are feared dead after a passenger plane crashed into the Potomac River after it collided with a U.S. Army helicopter. Now, it's still in the very early hours of the morning. These are live shots from Washington, D.C. Emergency teams, more than 300 of those responders, are still searching for any survivors. 60 people on board the American Airlines flight, 3 soldiers on the Black Hawk helicopter, and we understand at least 19 bodies have been recovered. Let's show you the plane coming into land then at Reagan Washington National Airport. This was seconds before the collision. It hit the helicopter, which was on a training flight, just before 9 p.m. local time. So quite a few hours since then. No survivors have been found yet. This is the first major US commercial air crash since 2009. Retail crime is at an all-time high, with more than 2,000 incidents reported per day. Last year, more than 70 of those included use of a weapon. That's double that have been reported in the previous year. Now, thefts have reached 20 million incidents per year, costing retailers £2.2 billion annually. And Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has praised John Prescott for his tenacity and vision ahead of the former Deputy PM's funeral service. And more than 300 family members, friends and colleagues have been invited to the service at Hull Minster. There they are, all gathered inside the building. Senior figures from the past and current Labour governments in attendance. Lord Prescott served as Deputy PM under Sir Tony Blair between 1997 and 2007. He died on November the 20th last year at the age of 86. That's it for the moment. I'll be back with more at the top of the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
We're just looking at those live pictures from John Prescott's funeral there, and Emily and Tom are going to take some of that this afternoon, are you? Big hitters in that room, you know, very well-regarded man.
Labour royalty, isn't it?
Yeah, we're expecting eulogies from both Tony Blair and from Gordon Brown. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, will give a reading as well. So we're gonna hear a little bit from former Prime Ministers about their time with a man who was a giant.
He really was.
Politics.
Yeah.
And who everyone seems to have quite a good-hearted story about.
He was bad-tempered and he shouted a bit, but his bark was worse than his bite. And he was good and he was a great speaker, and Blair couldn't have done half of his reforms of the Labour Party if he didn't have John Prescott by his side.
He was so important for getting that new Labour agenda through.
Really
because he brought along all the sort of trade unionists, the socialists, while Tony Blair was appealing to others.
So that's David Blunkett's there, Alan Milburn, who was Blair's health secretary.
And he's advising Wes Streeting at the moment.
Yes, he is, yeah. And that's Jack Straw, the former Home Secretary,
yes, it is,
who conspicuously did not get a peerage.
Interestingly, John Craig, the Sky News correspondent, had a story this morning on a podcast where he was saying in the 1995 Labour conference, I mean, he'd published something that may or may not have been true about John Prescott. And for the entirety of the conference, John Prescott followed him round with a pork pie, running even into the press room, just shouting, porky pies, with a physical pork pie, chasing round this senior journalist and senior member of the press lobby.
I think I was there when he was doing it. It was hilarious. I know. John was just very cross he didn't get to eat the pie.
But that's the kind of sort of good humour that actually we're missing quite a bit in politics.
Absolutely. Right, well, don't miss Tom and Emily from midday, but don't go anywhere. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll see you in just a little while.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The good news is it's going to be largely settled today. Plenty of sunshine to go around, though we can't rule out a few showers, particularly around coastal areas. It is going to be a cold start, likely seeing quite a widespread frost, also some icy stretches across Northern Ireland and across Scotland. But for many, a settled day ahead, plenty of sunshine. Still a few showers around coastal areas of northern parts of Wales, northern England, also around coast of Northern Ireland and Scotland, particularly down the northeastern coast of Scotland, could merge together, bringing longer spells of rain for parts of Shetland, and quite a brisk breeze here, taking the edge off temperatures, so feeling chillier here, but for most, temperatures around about average for the time of year. Now, it is going to turn chilly quite quickly as we head through into the evening, likely seeing some pockets of frost during the first part of the night, particularly across northeastern parts of Scotland. Once again, still plenty of showers affecting Shetland. And then we'll start to see this frontal system edge its way in from the west, so clouds spilling in here. Also some outbreaks of rain affecting western parts of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. But for many, it's going to be a dry but chilly end to the day. Once again, starting to see some pockets of frost develop, particularly across the far southeast. But this frontal system will start to move its way southeastwards, bringing plenty of wet and windy weather as it does so. This could be heavy at times and likely falling as snow across higher ground, particularly across Scotland and northern parts of England. So that leads to quite a wet start across much of the country by the time we reach tomorrow. And it's going to be quite a chilly night. As I say, could even see some frost falling towards high ground across northern parts of England and Scotland. Now, through the course of the day, this frontal system will continue to edge its way towards the southeast. Once again, this rain could be heavy at times, and behind it, there's going to be plenty of cloud, plenty of grey skies. That's away from Northern Ireland, northeastern parts of Scotland, perhaps southern parts of Wales and the southwest, where we could see some brighter spells by the time we reach the afternoon. And once again, temperatures around about average, but feeling rather cool under cloudier skies. Bye-bye.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It is 11:42. Let's return to Washington, D.C.
American media now reporting more than 30 bodies have been recovered after the American Airlines plane collided with a US Army helicopter across the Potomac River, just 2 miles from the White House, where Donald Trump was at the time.
So Matthew Capucci is a Washington local and witnessed the crash this morning. Good morning, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us here in the UK. So tell us, if you don't mind, what did you see?
Good morning. Good to see you, and I wish it was under better circumstances. Right now, you can see behind me, there are still red and blue flashing lights in the distance. You know, we had at one point over 300 search and rescue operations or personnel, trying to take care of the scene. It's been a very active scene really all night long. The incident took place last night local time at 8:56 p.m. By about 9:01 p.m., all flights were being rerouted from Reagan National Airport to Dulles Airport, which is roughly 30 kilometers west and northwest of Washington, D.C. It's our international airport. And I can tell you, being here at the time, it was sort of unsettling. We live right next to the airport. Ordinarily, you'd hear airplanes taking off and landing essentially 9, 10, 11, 10 o'clock at night, and yet the sky was eerily quiet. At the same time, a cacophony of sirens down at the ground, and that's when we saw lights really lighting up the entire Potomac with search and rescue teams and both sides of the river showing you it really was a joint response from both D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Right now, there have been no confirmations, no reports whatsoever of any survivors. And as a meteorologist, I can tell you the conditions are pretty rough for rescue operations. Water temperatures around 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. There are chunks of ice floating down the river. Last night, the winds were strong as well. So really, hypothermia can set in only probably 5-10 minutes under those conditions. And the fact that there still haven't been any survivors confirmed, it's tough not to fear for the worst.
Extraordinary.
Very difficult. And do we know much, Matthew, about the passengers on board the commercial airline? Were they mainly Washington locals, are you aware?
It's simply too early to know that. We don't have a flight manifest. We know that this is a flight that was coming from Wichita, Kansas. It's the Dwight D. Eisenhower Airport, took off at 5:22 p.m. local time on Wednesday evening. And we really don't know anything quite yet. I think part of the reason why authorities here haven't even given updates on conditions regarding how many dead, injured, if there were any survivors, is because the airline, American Airlines, is still trying to notify families of passengers as to the status of their loved ones before it's released to the media. So I think it'll be probably at least 6 to 10 more hours before we get that information.
Just one brief question as well, because we're up against the clock a little, but how common is it to see those military helicopters in the sky above DC?
Far too common. You know, everyone around here knows the airspace is incredibly busy. The airport itself is very busy, but then you have the White House over here, helicopters taking off and landing there, multiple military bases. It's sort of like a 3D jigsaw puzzle, and inevitably, when you have that many moving parts, things become a little more complicated and the risk increases.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. Fascinating insight there. Matthew Capucci, a local in Washington, D.C.
Up next, but first, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast of some of our top European holiday destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Strong winds across the Canary Islands, also some wet and windy weather for the Balearic Islands, but largely settled elsewhere across eastern parts of the Mediterranean, particularly for Greece and parts of Italy. But as we move our way westwards, this is where we'll find the unsettled weather, so some heavy showers, also some strong winds at times. But further west, largely settled as high pressure dominates, but that is going to bring in some strong winds at times across Madeira and also Tenerife. But that's where we'll see the best of the temperatures, and also largely settled as we head towards the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life, passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans during the Second World War. He was working for MI5, but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah, exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for Her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace. And it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:52, Britain's News on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Bert Turner.
So Sir Keir Starmer has praised John Prescott for his tenacity and vision and fighting spirit ahead of the former Deputy Prime Minister's funeral service today in Hull.
Let's cross to Anna Riley, who is at Hull Minster. Anna, morning to you. They're all there, aren't they? Former Prime Ministers, Foreign Secretaries. It's Labour royalty gathering for one of the great Labour figures of the last 40 years.
Good morning. It certainly is. We've heard the bells ringing earlier, but silence has descended now with the crowds are gathering ahead of the service starting at 12 o'clock for Lord John Prescott. He passed away on November the 20th last year after living with Alzheimer's disease, passed away at the age of 86, and he was a Hull East MP for almost 40 years between 1970 and 2010. He remains Britain's longest serving Deputy Prime Minister, having held the position in Tony Blair's Labour government from 1997 until 2007. Now this service here, 300 people have been invited by John Prescott's family, and as you say, Labour royalty. We know that eulogies will be given by former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, former Prime Minister Tony Blair also in attendance, Sir Keir Starmer, as well as Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. The service is hosted by the Reverend Canon Dominic Black, and the funeral service is going to include singing from the choral Hull Children's Choir. As you say, we've seen attendance already from the Deputy MP Angela Rayner, we've seen Keir Starmer in attendance, and other senior members of the Labour Party, both past and present. And ahead of this funeral service, Sir Keir Starmer hailed John Prescott for his tenacity and vision and fighting spirit. The Prime Minister said Lord Prescott will be remembered as a man who stood up for working people and fought for what he believed in. He said John Prescott's funeral is a moment to reflect on his legacy alongside those who loved him most. Since his death, Keir Starmer says, I've been moved to hear countless people relate their stories of John, tales of characteristic generosity, humour and charisma. Amongst the public, it's clear that he had legendary status. He was held in huge affection by people across the country who admired his straightforward authenticity and knew that he would always have their back. So that's what we know so far. We can see behind us the cortege soon to arrive, and we will be covering this funeral throughout the afternoon. People coming here to pay their respects.
That's Anna Riley at Hull Minster.
Thank you, Anna. We were saying it's 2 months since he passed away. It's actually quite a long time.
It is, actually.
I wonder if it was about coordinating the diaries of all those important people.
You've got Blair there, Brown, the Deputy Prime Minister. Is Sadiq Khan there?
Apparently, looking at the information online.
That's it from Britain's Newsroom.
Then.
I wasn't invited, but I was a big fan of his, and I was a particular fan of John Prescott's wife, Pauline, who was lovely.
I'd like to see you in that room with those people.
It would be quite interesting. There'd be one or two, what's he doing
Very
here?
pleased to see you.
Not everybody, certainly not Gordon Brown. That's it from us. Up next, of course, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. We'll see you next week.
A Black Hawk helicopter and an American Airlines jet. How did these two craft come to crash in what should be the most secure aviation area in the world?
Yes, we'll be bringing you that. And you won't believe the number of Bulgarians and Romanians who are entering the United Kingdom illegally through our common travel agreement with Ireland. We'll reveal all in a GB News exclusive.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A fine day for most of us today with plenty of sunny spells, but there will be some showers around, particularly towards the northeast of Scotland, where an area of low pressure is moving away. It continues to bring tightly packed isobars, so a strong and gusty northwest wind, along with some showery rain, particularly for Shetland and Orkney. Meanwhile, a few showers just affecting the northwest of England for a time, western Scotland, North Wales, for example. But for many, it's simply a dry day with long spells of sunshine and feeling pleasant enough where we've got light winds in the south, 7 or 8 Celsius, colder further north, 3 or 4 in the north of Scotland, along with that gusty wind. Towards the end of the afternoon, the clouds will thicken across Northern Ireland and we'll see some light outbreaks of rain start to move into the Western Isles, but on the whole it's a clear end to the day, and as a result temperatures will fall away across central and eastern Scotland, eastern England as well. Those temperatures slipping overnight with a frost forming in places, just some patchy cloud here and there, otherwise extensive clear spells for the first part of the night at least. However, for Northern Ireland, western Scotland, soon enough areas of rain move in, and as that rain moves into the cold air across Scotland and northern England, it will be falling as hill snow, but at lower levels expect some rain. Now that's going to move into central and southeast England by the end of the night, along with a lot of low clouds, so gloomy and damp start, but brighter skies on the way for Northern Ireland in the wake of that. But it will be a wet start for the Midlands, the south and southeast of England. Some heavy rain in places, along with a blustery breeze. The rain does ease away, it pushes through, but it stays dull and gloomy across the Midlands, east and southeast England. Brighter for the north of Scotland, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest, with some decent sunshine by the end of the day.